She walked into the ballroom, and the room slowly turned. On the program, one name had been left where no one could see it. When a woman is erased in silence, what does justice sound like? The first child to miss the note was a little boy with scuffed sneakers and a fiddle too big for his shoulder. Lena heard it right away. She did not stop him sharply. She never did. She only lifted her own bow, played the phrase once, slower this time, and waited until the room settled around the sound. The old community room on the edge of Nashville was never quiet for long. Folding chairs scraped. A heater clicked in the wall. Somewhere near the back, a girl whispered that her fingers hurt. But when Lena played one of her grandmother's melodies, even the restless children seemed to understand they were touching something older than themselves. Again, Lena said gently. Just kinder. The boy frowned at the strings, then tried again. This time the note bent in the right direction. Not perfect, but true enough to make Lena smile. There it is. The children grinned as if they had discovered a secret. That was what kept Lena coming back every Saturday, even when the pay barely covered gas and replacement strings. These kids did not know the names of old ballads. They did not care who had sung them first, or which mountain town had carried them across generations. But sometimes, for one small second, a child would draw a bow across a string, and a forgotten thing would breathe again. On the metal chair beside Lena's case sat a small recorder, wrapped in a faded handkerchief. She had brought it that afternoon because one of the girls had asked where the tune came from. Lena had almost said, "My grandmother," but that felt too small. So near the end of class, when the room had grown warm from bodies and effort, she pressed play. A woman's voice crackled through the tiny speaker, thin with age and static, but steady underneath. Ruth Whitaker had never sounded polished. She had sounded tired, honest, and alive. Behind her voice came the faint scrape of a fiddle, the rhythm uneven in places, as if someone had been keeping time with a foot on a wooden floor. The children listened. Not perfectly, not like an audience in a concert hall, but with the strange respect children sometimes gave to something they did not fully beside them. Lena stood, with her arms folded lightly across her waist. She knew every rough breath in that recording. She knew where her grandmother's voice dipped, where the bow dragged, where the melody stopped before the last verse because the tape had worn thin. That unfinished place had bothered Lena for years. She had tried quietly to complete the song. Not to improve it. She would never have used that word. Just to follow where Ruth might have gone if life had given her a little more time, a little less work, a little more room to be heard. After class, the children packed up in bursts of noise. Parents came and went. A mother thanked Lena with the tired gratitude of someone counting dollars until payday. Then the room emptied, leaving behind a few loose sheets of music, and the hush that always came after children left a place. Lena was latching her fiddle case when Cole Mercer appeared in the doorway. He leaned there like he belonged in every room he entered. Dark jacket, easy smile, hair just careless enough to look expensive. He had a way of making people feel he had chosen them out of a crowd, even when he was already looking past them toward the next opportunity. That was the one. He said. Lena looked up. The one what? That song. He stepped inside, nodding toward the recorder. The one you played for the kids. Lena, that's the kind of thing people spend years trying to fake. She stiffened a little, though his voice was warm. It isn't fake, I know. Cole raised both hands, softening the words. That's my point. It's real. It has dirt under its nails. Lena gave him a look. He laughed quietly. You know what I mean, she did. That was part of the trouble. Cole had been around enough studios to speak in phrases that sounded like praise until you held them too long. Still, when he looked at her, she wanted to believe the best version of him. He had come to her little class after a long day of meetings. He had listened. He had noticed. That was my grandmother, Lena said, picking up the recorder. Ruth, I remember you telling me about her. Cole's voice lowered, respectful in the way he knew worked on her. She raised you on those songs, didn't she? Some of them. Lena unwound the handkerchief from the recorder. Some she only sang when she was tired. And the one you're working on? He asked. Lena paused. The unfinished pages were in her bag, tucked inside a plain folder with pencil marks along the edges. She had not shown them to many people. Not because they were perfect. Because they were not. They still felt too close to Ruth's kitchen table. Too close to unpaid bills. too close to the evenings when her grandmother sang while pretending not to worry. Cole crossed the room slowly. Careful not to crowd her. Let me hear it. It isn't ready. That's why you show it to someone before it's red-eyed. He smiled. I can help shape it, not change what it is. Just give it a chance. Lena looked down at the folder in her bag. She thought of the children missing notes and finding them again. She thought of Ruth's voice trapped in that small recorder, played for a handful of kids in a room with bad lights and folding chairs.
We won't get dressed up. Cole's answer came quickly.
Almost tenderly. We'll protect what makes it yours. The word yours landed softly. Lena wished, later, that she had noticed how easily he had said it. That evening, she brought him back to her small place, where the walls held more instruments than photographs. The room where she kept Ruth's things was narrow and warm, with an old lamp on the desk and stacks of music paper, arranged more carefully than anything else she owned. Cole stood by the doorway at first, as if respecting a chapel. Lena set the recorder on the desk. Beside it, she laid the unfinished sheet music. The pencil lines looked suddenly bare under the lamp. This is all I have, she said. The original recording, and what I've been trying to finish. Cole did not reach for it right away. He looked at Lena instead, and that made the trust easier. You've been carrying this by yourself too long, he said. Her throat tightened before she could stop it. She did not want fame. She did not even know if she wanted the song on a stage. She only wanted Ruth's voice to matter somewhere beyond memory. Cole finally picked up the pages. He studied them with the serious face he wore in studios, the one that made musicians believe he could hear the future hiding in a rough take. This could open doors, he said. For the song? For you too, Lena. Shook her head a little. I don't need doors, I just don't want her erased. She won't be. Cole slid the pages carefully into his leather folder. I promise. The promise should have comforted her. Instead, it made the room feel suddenly larger, as if something had moved away from her, and she could not yet name what it was. At the door, Cole kissed her forehead and lifted the folder lightly. Lena stood in the hallway after he left, listening to his car pull away from the curb. The recorder was still on her desk, wrapped again in Ruth's old handkerchief, but the unfinished pages were gone, carried into the night by the man she loved. And, for the first time, the little room where Lena kept her grandfather's songs felt too quiet. By Monday morning, Lena had started listening for sounds that were not there. No car slowing at the curb. No key in the door. No call from Cole saying he had stayed up too late with the song because he could not stop hearing it. The small room where she kept Ruth's recorder looked the same as it always had. But the desk felt stripped bare without the unfinished pages. She told herself not to be foolish. Cole worked in a world of late nights, closed doors, and people who spoke in promises before contracts. He had said he would take care of the song. She wanted to believe that, but wanting had always been the softest place in her. Near noon, an email came in from the Gala office. Lena opened it at the kitchen table, with her fiddle case resting by her feet. The subject line was polite, practical, nothing that warned her to sit down. It thanked her for agreeing to provide live instrumental support during the upcoming Heritage Gala, and included the updated program for rehearsal. Instrumental support. She read the words once. Then again, her eyes moved down the attachment until she saw the featured performance section. Avery Lane would debut a new Appalachian-inspired song arranged by Cole Mercer. For a moment, Lena did not understand what she was seeing. Her mind reached for the easiest explanation first. Maybe this was a different song. Maybe Cole had used only a phrase. Maybe, arranged, meant he was still planning to add Ruth's name later, in some proper place she did not know to look for. Then she saw the title. It was not exactly Ruth's title. Cole had polished it, shortened it, made it easier to print in bold. But beneath that new name sat the melody Lena had learned beside her grandmother's kitchen table, the one with the missing ending, the one she had tried to finish with her own careful pencil marks. There was no Whitaker anywhere on the page. Lena pushed back from the tables, so quickly the chair legs scraped the floor. She called Cole. It rang until his voicemail answered. She hung up before the greeting finished. A few minutes later a text appeared, in meetings all day. Don't panic. It's just the first draft of the program. She stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered over the letters, but nothing she could type felt steady enough. Before she could answer, another message came. You're still part of it. They have you down for fiddle. A good thing. The words sat on her phone like something cold. By the time she arrived at rehearsal that afternoon, the small performance hall was already busy with cable coils, music stands, and people moving too quickly to notice anyone who did not look important. Lena carried her fiddle case in one hand and the printed program in the other. She had folded it once, then twice, until the crease ran straight through Cole's name. He saw her from across the room. For half a second, his face changed. Not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for Lena. He knew what she had seen. Then he smiled and walked toward her with that easy public version of himself. "Hey," he said, keeping his voice light. "I was going to call you. You put your name on it." Cole glanced around. A few musicians were tuning nearby. Avery stood on stage with a microphone in her hand, laughing softly at something someone had said off to the side. Where then? He took the folded program from her hand as if it were a napkin she had crumpled by mistake. "Lena, this is how these things work. Early programs are messy. Credits move around." "My grandmother's name didn't move around," she said. "It disappeared." His jaw tightened, but only briefly. "You're being emotional." The word landed harder than if he had raised his voice. Lena looked past him toward the stage. Avery had begun humming through the opening line. The melody came out smoother than Ruth had ever sung it. Cleaner, prettier, dressed in a way that made the room nod along. It should have sounded beautiful. Instead, it made Lena feel as if someone had taken a family photograph, cut out the faces, and framed the wallpaper. Avery did not know. Lena could see that immediately. The young singer held the lyric sheet like a gift, not a weapon. She was nervous and bright-eyed, eager for the kind of chance people in Nashville chased for years. When Cole stepped back toward the stage, Avery looked to him for approval. He gave it. Lena stood with her fiddle case by her leg and understood her place in the room. She was not the writer, not the family, not the source. She was the background sound, useful as long as she stayed where they had put her. Rehearsal began. The first notes filled the hall. Cole had changed the tempo, softened the rough edges, and given Avery space to lift the chorus like a banner. But underneath all of it, Ruth was still there. Not fully, not fairly, but there, buried beneath shine. Lena opened her case with careful hands. She took out her fiddle because she had been asked to play, and because walking out would let Cole tell the story without her in the room. Her bow hovered over the strings, but for a few measures she could not make herself join. At the back of the hall, an older man sat alone near a stack of unused chairs. Lena had noticed him earlier only in passing. He was quiet, thin-shouldered, with both hands resting on a worn cap. He had the stillness of someone who had spent a lifetime listening before speaking. While others watched Avery, he watched Lena. Then his head tilted toward the stage. When the chorus came around again, he stood not quickly, not dramatically, just with the slow certainty of a man recognizing a voice from another room of his life. Lena saw him move toward the side aisle. Cole did too. An irritation flickered across his face. The old man stopped a few feet from Lena. "Miss," he said, low enough that only she could hear it first. "Who brought that tune in?" Her fingers tightened around the bow. "Why?" His eyes stayed on the stage, but his face had gone pale in a way that made the busy room seem suddenly far away. "I heard a woman sing that once," he said. "Long before any of these folks had microphones like that." Lena could barely breathe. "What woman?" He turned to her then. "Ruth Whitaker," he said. "If I'm remembering right, there was a demo, an old station copy. Might even be a paper record with it." The music kept going on stage, polished and bright, while Lena stood frozen beside her opal fiddle case. For the first time since she had opened the Gala program that morning, the pain inside her made room for something else, a question. Maybe Ruth's voice had not been erased after all. Maybe somewhere in a box or a drawer or a forgotten shelf, the past had kept its own witness. Lena followed Samuel out of the rehearsal hall before the last chorus finished. Behind them, the song kept going, bright and polished, carried by microphones and careful arrangements. Each note seemed to chase her down the side hallway, wearing Ruth's melody like a borrowed coat. Lena held her fiddle case close, not because she needed it, but because her hands needed something solid. Samuel did not speak until they reached the quiet near the back exit. "I don't want to give you false hope," he said. Lena looked at him. "Then don't." He studied her for a moment, as if deciding how much truth a wounded person could carry. I remember your grandmother's voice. Not perfectly, but I remember enough. If that station copy still exists, it won't prove everything people wish it would prove. But it might prove where the song came from. Might, she repeated. That's the honest word. It was not enough to save her. It was enough to make her move. Samuel took her to a cramped old office connected to the closed-down local station where he had once worked. The place smelled of dust, cardboard, and old paper. Metal shelves leaned under boxes marked by hand. Some held reels. Some held brittle folders. Some held nothing but years no one had bothered to sort. Lena wanted to tear through every box. Samuel stopped her with one look. Slowly, he said, "If we rush, we miss the thing we came for." So they worked the way he told her to work. Drawer by drawer, folder by folder. Lena read names until they blurred. Some were church quartets. Some were bluegrass pickers. Some were women who had likely sung once into a station microphone and gone home to wash dishes, raise children, and never know if anyone had kept a record of them. Every few minutes, Lena checked the time. The gala was that night. Cole would be expecting the program to move exactly as printed. The donors would sit beneath soft lights, listening to a story about heritage, roots, and authenticity. Her grandmother's song would be presented as if it had been born in a studio, cleaned and packaged for people who could afford to clap for the poor, as long as the poor stayed unnamed. That thought steadied her more than anger did. Near mid-afternoon, Samuel went still. He had pulled a thin ledger from the bottom of a file box. The cover was frayed. The pages inside were yellowed but neatly ruled. He ran one finger down a column of handwritten entries, slower and slower until it stopped. Here, Lena moved beside him. The name Ruth Whitaker sat in plain ink, smaller than Lena expected, almost shy on the page. Beside it was a song title, a tape code, and a note about family ownership and credit for commercial performance. For a second, Lena did not touch the paper. She was afraid that if she did, the ink might vanish. Samuel exhaled softly. There she is. The words entered Lena quietly. They did not make her triumphant. They made her knees weak. Ruth had not told the family clearly, or maybe she had, and the story had been lost in hard years and tired evenings. But at some point, long before Cole ever heard the melody, Ruth had stood before a microphone and left her name behind. Samuel found the matching tape record in another box. The tape itself was fragile, not something they could play easily or carry into a ballroom like a weapon. But the ledger entry and a paper certificate tied to the station archive were enough to begin. Enough for what? Lena asked. Samuel looked at the copies they had made. Enough to make an honest person stop and look. By late afternoon, Lena sat across from Marlene Shaw in a small office at the Gala venue. Marlene had a controlled face, the kind built by years of solving problems before rich people noticed them. Her desk held programs, donor cards, and a clean copy of the evening schedule. Cole's name was printed near the featured performance. Lena placed the copies on the desk. Marlene did not reach for them immediately. You understand what you're asking me? I'm asking you not to honor a song under the wrong name. You're asking me to interrupt a major donor event based on a dispute that arrived the same day. Lena felt the old urge to shrink back. She could almost hear Cole telling her she was being emotional, that she did not understand how these things worked. For one breath, the room pressed against her. Then, she looked at Ruth's name on the copied ledger. I'm not asking you to believe my feelings, Lena said. I'm asking you to look at the record. Samuel stood beside her, quiet and straight-backed. He did not push. He did not dramatize. He simply gave Marlene the tape code, the ledger entry, and the certificate copy in the same careful order he had found them. Marlene read. The room changed as she did. Not loudly, nothing dramatic happened. But her expression lost some of its professional distance. This doesn't settle every legal question, she said at last. No, Samuel answered. But it raises enough of one. Marlene looked toward the closed office door. Outside, the Gala staff moved through the hallway, their footsteps quick, their voices polished. The evening was already in motion. If I stop that presentation without enough grounds, she said, I damage the foundation. And if you let it go forward after seeing this? Lena asked. Marlene's eyes returned to her. For the first time, she looked at Lena not as an upset musician, not as a last-minute problem, but as someone carrying the weight of a name that had been left off a page. I need time, Marlene said. We don't have much, I know. Lena left the office with no promise. only the copies still warm from the machine, and Samuel's hand briefly resting on her shoulder before he let her walk ahead. By evening, the venue had transformed itself. The same building that had felt tense and practical hours earlier now glowed with chandeliers, black jackets, long dresses, and the low murmur of people who expected beauty without knowing what it had cost. Near the entrance, a small table held guest cards and folded programs. Lena found hers, fiddle support. She stared at the words, then slipped the card into her bag beside the copied certificate. Samuel nodded from a quiet place near the wall. That was all she needed. Lena stepped through the ballroom doors. The room did not go silent all at once. It changed in pieces. One conversation faltered. Then another. A few guests turned. Then more, until a narrow path opened without anyone meaning to make one. Lena kept walking, her fiddle case in one hand, Ruth's proof in the other. On the right side of the room, near the stage, Cole saw her. The confidence left his face so quickly, it was almost more honest than anything he had said to her in weeks. He looked at the papers in her hand, then at Samuel behind her, then back at Lena. And in that instant, Cole understood that the secret he had dressed up for the gala had just walked into the center of the room. Cole recovered before anyone else in the room, understood what had changed. That was one of his gifts. He could smooth a wrinkle in the air before most people noticed the cloth had torn. He stepped away from the stage with a polite smile, one hand half raised as if Lena's arrival were expected, harmless, almost sweet. "Lena," he said quietly when he reached her. "This is not the place." She looked at him for a moment, then passed him to the stage where Avery stood under the warm lights, still holding the lyric sheet. "No," Lena said. "It's exactly the place." Her voice did not carry far, but it did not shake. That surprised Cole. It surprised Lena too. Samuel stood a few steps behind her, silent, his cap in both hands. He did not need to speak. The folder Lena carried had his careful order inside it: the copied ledger page, the tape code, the station certificate, Ruth's name in ink that had waded through 2 years of dust for someone to read it again. "That's what you were counting on." His face tightened. Not anger, not yet. More like the first crack in a wall built to look like charm. Across the room, Marlene Shaw had already noticed them. She moved toward Lena with the controlled pace of a woman trying not to alarm donors, musicians, or board members standing close enough to turn curiosity into gossip. "Come with me, Marlene." They stepped to the side of the ballroom, near the curtained entrance behind the stage. The music between presentations had begun, soft enough to let conversation continue but loud enough to cover panic. If panic stayed quiet, Lena opened the folder and placed the papers into Marlene's hands. "I'm asking you to stop the award before it names the song, Under the Wrong People," she said. "Not because I'm angry. Because if that happens tonight, everyone in that room becomes part of erasing her." Marlene read quickly. Then she read slower. Cole stayed close, his smile gone now. "This is an old station document," he said. "It doesn't prove ownership. It proves somebody sang something once." Samuel's voice came from behind Lena, low and steady. "It proves Ruth Whitaker recorded that melody before you ever arranged it. It proves credit terms were written down. And it proves you had reason to ask questions before putting your name where hers belonged." Avery had come down from the stage without Lena noticing. She stood at the edge of the group, still bright in her performance makeup, but the brightness had drained from her eyes. "Cole," she said, "what is he talking about?" Cole turned to her with the quick patience of someone managing a younger artist. "Avery, don't get pulled into this. It's a misunderstanding." But Avery was looking at Lena now. "Is it your family song?" Lena could have said many things. She could have poured every sleepless hour into that moment. She could have named every small humiliation from the past week. Instead, she only touched the copied ledger with one finger. "It was my grandmother's voice first." Avery looked at the page. Her lips parted, but no defense came. Marlene closed the folder. For one long breath, the gala went on without them. Glasses lifted, donors laughed softly. A man near the front adjusted his jacket. The room still believed the evening had a shape it could trust. Then Marlene walked to the microphone. Cole followed one step, then stopped. The music faded under a technician's hand.
"Ladies and gentlemen,"
Marlene said, her voice calm enough to steady the room. "Before we continue, we need to correct the record regarding our featured song tonight." A murmur moved through the ballroom. Lena stood near the curtain, not on the stage, not in the spotlight. Her knees felt weak, but she stayed upright. Samuel remained beside her. Avery stood a little apart from Cole now, the lyric sheet folded in her hand. Marlene did not dramatize it. She did not shame anyone more than the truth required. She explained that new documentation had been presented, showing the melody and original recording belonged to Ruth Whitaker, and that no award or recognition would proceed until the credit was corrected. The room grew still in that particular way a crowd becomes still when politeness has nowhere to hide. Cole's face changed as he listened. First disbelief, then calculation, then the awful knowledge that calculation was no longer enough. A board member approached him quietly. Another man from the distribution group stepped away from him rather than toward him. No one shouted. No one needed to. Cole had built his climb on the word authentic, and now the room had seen what he was willing to do with something real. Avery walked to the microphone after Marlene lowered it. Her hands trembled, but her voice was clear. "I didn't know," she said, "but I know now. I won't perform this song under my name. Not tonight. Not ever." Then she turned, not to Cole, but to Lena. "I'm sorry." Lena nodded once. It was not forgiveness, not fully. It was acknowledgement. It was enough for that moment. The weeks that followed did not make Lena famous overnight, and she was grateful for that. Cole's distribution deal fell apart quietly, the way industry doors often closed. A few calls not returned, a few meetings canceled, his name no longer spoken with the same confidence. Avery released a public apology, and later recorded the song again. This time with Ruth Whitaker's name where it belonged, and Lena's work credited properly. The first royalty check was not large enough to change Lena's life, but it was large enough to change what she could offer. She rented the small community theater on a Sunday afternoon. No chandeliers, no donor cards, no velvet rope, just rows of old seats, children carrying borrowed instruments, and parents who came in tired, but stayed because something gentle was happening. Lena stood on the small stage with her fiddle under her chin. For a moment, she looked at the empty space beside her, the space where Samuel sat near the front, his cap resting on his knee. Ruth's voice seemed to live whenever the first note waited to be played. Then Lena drew the bow across the strings. The melody came out plain and clear, not polished for a ballroom, not dressed for anyone's approval. The children listened. Samuel bowed his head. And when the program called the song by its proper name, with Ruth Whitaker printed beneath it, Lena smiled softly and kept playing.